Hello everyone. So today we'll begin with the next part of the chapter, that is nothing but oogenesis. So regarding the definition of oogenesis, it is nothing but the process of formation of mature female gamete is called as oogenesis. Once again I'll repeat, the process of formation of mature female gamete is called as oogenesis. Okay. Then where does this oogenesis occur? This oogenesis usually takes place in the Graafian follicles. So here oogenesis is usually initiated in embryonic stage itself, that is when you are there in the womb of the mother. That time only oogenesis is initiated, and as a result of oogenesis, millions of egg mother cell, that is oogonia, are formed within the ovary. And remember, that is this oogenesis is taking, as you all know, that is taking place in the embryonic stage. So no more oogonia are formed and added after the birth of the child. So what I mean to say is, this oogenesis usually occurs in the embryonic stage when you are there in the womb of the mother. Once you are born, there is no formation of oogonia, because already the many more oogonia will be formed inside the ovary. Then this oogonia will multiply to form your primary oocytes. And they will enter prophase 1 of meiosis and get temporarily arrested at that stage. Okay. Then here they have given the diagram, you can see, regarding the section of ovary. So what all the ovary will consist of. Okay. So you can see it carefully. Then after seeing the diagram, we will move further. That is here usually, that is a process of oogenesis. That is here in oogenesis you can see, that is each primary oocyte will get surrounded by layer of granulosa cells to form primary follicle. Or you can say, that is this process of oogenesis, for your convenience you can divide it into mainly three phases, that is phase of multiplication, phase of growth, and phase of maturation. Then your phase of, what do you mean by phase of multiplication? So in this phase, that is the primary germ cells of the epithelium of the ovary will undergo rapid mitotic divisions to form a group of diploid egg mother cells, or you can also call it as oogonia. That is nothing but the phase of multiplication. Phase of multiplication means that is the primary germ cells of the ovary, which are usually diploid. They will undergo mitosis and give rise to diploid egg mother cell, or you can also call it as oogonia. Then next phase is phase of growth. This phase of growth usually occurs when the female attains maturity. So what happens during this phase? During this growth phase, one oogonium, there are many oogonia, that is oogonia plural, singular is oogonium. During growth phase, one oogonium is transformed into diploid primary oocyte. So they have, with the help of the yellow color ring, they have highlighted the primary follicle, or the, so inside this primary follicle you will have the primary oocyte. Okay. So here during growth phase, as I already told you, only one oogonium is going to get transformed into diploid primary oocyte, and the other oogonia, what happens to them then? The other oogonia will transform themselves into a single layer nutritive follicular epithelium around it, and this structure which is formed is called as a primary follicle. So this, the circle I have already told you, the yellow color ring, inside which you will have the showing the highlighting structure, that is the primary follicle. And this primary follicle now gets surrounded by more and more layers of granulosa cells. Before that, many primary follicles degenerate during the phase from birth to puberty. Therefore, at puberty, only 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicles are left in each ovary. Okay, then coming to the development of ovarian follicles. So, this ovarian follicle, which will come ovarian follicle. So, here you can say the primary follicle. I have already told you regarding the primary follicle. What happens? That is, primary oocyte will be surrounded by a layer of granular cells surrounding granular cells. That is nothing but the structure of primary follicle. This primary follicle now gets transformed itself into secondary follicle. How? Here, what is the difference between the primary follicle and secondary follicle? Here, in secondary follicle, there are many more layers of granular cells and a new theca will be surrounding the primary oocyte. That is nothing but the secondary follicle. Now, soon your secondary follicle will get transformed into tertiary follicle. Okay, and which is having a characteristic feature, that is fluid filled cavity called as antrum. And here theca layers are also there. These theca layers will form inner theca interna and outer theca externa. You simply remember that is tertiary follicle is characterized by having a fluid filled cavity called as antrum. Then this tertiary follicle now will undergo further changes and it will develop into mature follicle, which is also called as Graafian follicle. Okay, this is how there is development of ovarian follicle from primary follicle to secondary follicle, secondary to tertiary, and tertiary to Graafian follicle. Okay, now next one is regarding the phase of maturation. So already I had told you that is for your convenience you can divide the process of oogenesis into three phases, that is phase of multiplication, phase of growth and phase of maturation. Till now you have seen the two phases, that is phase of multiplication and phase of growth. Now we will move on to the phase of maturation, under which we will study that is how the divisions occur. During this phase, your primary oocyte, which is present in the tertiary follicle, will grow and undergo first unequal mitotic division to form a large haploid secondary oocyte and a tiny first polar body. Okay, so this secondary oocyte retains the nutrient rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. Remember. So here tertiary follicle further will change into mature follicle, or you can also call it as Graafian follicle. Then secondary oocyte forms a new membrane that is called as zona pellucida, and your Graafian follicle now will rupture to release the secondary oocyte, or you can also call it as ovum from the ovary, and that process is called as ovulation. Okay, so here you can see by this diagram, that is oogenesis. This diagram may be asked for, that is 3 marks question. Give the schematic representation of oogenesis. So in oogenesis, by seeing this diagram, I will explain you. Listen carefully. That is, during this phase, as already told you, that is the primary oocyte. Here oogone is there, which is diploid, will having 46 chromosome. It will undergo mitosis, that is during the embryonic stage, and it will give rise to primary oocyte. This primary oocyte, which is diploid, will grow in size. Okay, and then it will undergo first meiotic division, which is reductional division, to form two unequal haploid cells. Here you can see here, that is 2n grey color, that is 2n cells, and they have grown, that is the green color or faint green, that is the below cells you can see. Then one among them, that is blue color, navy blue color, the faint blue color, whatever you say, it is 2n, one of them have come forward. Okay, and then it has undergone meiosis 1, and as a result of meiosis 1, which is an reductional cell division, it has given rise to two unequal cells. One is large haploid cell and the another one is small cell. The smaller cell is called as first polar body, that is pink color, and the larger cell is called as that is pink color is secondary oocyte. Now this secondary oocyte will undergo meiosis 2, which is equational cell division, to form two unequal haploid cells. So here the smaller cell, again small green color cell, you can call it as second polar body, and the larger cell is called as oocyte, that is larger green cell is called as oocyte. So usually one thing you remember is meiosis 2 is generally arrested at metaphase. Meiosis 2 does not complete. Rather, this meiosis 2 is generally arrested at metaphase and does not take place until the sperm penetrates the egg. In most of the organism, including human female, the ovulation occurs at, listen carefully, ovulation occurs at secondary oocyte stage, in which meiosis 1 has already completed. Okay, then coming to next is regarding the structure of ovum or the egg. So as in the diagram you can see, egg will be spherical, and as you all know, that is a female gamete is always non-motile. The size of the egg is about 0.2 mm in diameter, and usually ovum has got three membranes. That is, first one is plasma membrane, or you can also call it as oolemma, which is the innermost layer. The next layer is zona pellucida, outer to the plasma membrane. The next is corona radiata, which is the outermost layer formed of follicle cells. This is regarding the structure of their egg. Then coming to the difference between spermatogenesis and oogenesis. So here usually in the last class you have seen regarding the spermatogenesis. Yes, spermatogenesis, we'll see first of all the spermatogenesis and then oogenesis. So as you all know, that is spermatogenesis is going to occur in the testis, whereas on the opposite side, that is oogenesis, as I already told you, it will occur in the ovary. Spermatogenesis, that is, it has got limited growth phase, whereas in oogenesis it has got elaborated growth phase. Okay, then next difference is each primary spermatocytes will give rise to 4 sperms. Here primary spermatocytes are always diploid, okay, which will give rise to 4 haploid sperms, whereas here each primary oocyte which is diploid will give rise to only 1 haploid ovum. Then in spermatogenesis no polar body formation occurs, whereas in oogenesis, that is formation of 2 polar bodies you can see. Then in again next difference, that is in spermatogenesis, or you can say spermatogenesis process will begin at puberty and it will extend up to salinity. Okay, whereas oogenesis, it is going to begin at the embryonic stage but suspends up to the puberty. It ceases around the age of 50, that is menopause. Okay, so these are the differences between spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Okay, the next part is the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle, in shortcut you can also call it as MC, that is the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle, or you can also call it as an reproductive cycle. So regarding the definition, the reproductive cycle, the females, especially primates, that is example monkeys, apes, human beings, is called as menstrual cycle. Once again I will repeat, that is the reproductive cycle in the female primates is called as menstrual cycle. Then you may ask me, who all come in under primates? That is monkeys, apes and human beings. Then here you can also say that another definition, that is, it is a cyclic events starting from one menstruation till the next during reproductive period, that is puberty to menopause of an woman's cycle, is called as menstrual cycle. These are nothing but, that is, menstrual cycle is nothing but the cyclic events which start from one menstruation till the next menstruation. Okay, then here, as you all know, that is the duration of menstrual cycle is 28 to 29 days. Okay, then menstrual cycle is also seen in other primates, as already mentioned, that is, it is seen in monkeys, apes and human beings. So here events of menstrual cycle, here ovarian cycle, which is nothing but the changes in the ovary, whereas it will include uterine cycle also, which is nothing but the changes in uterus, oviduct as well as vagina. So before seeing the next part, let me tell you regarding the mean arc. So what do you mean by mean arc? They may ask you for 1 mark question. What do you mean by mean arc? Mean arc is nothing but the first menstruation which begins at the puberty is called as mean arc. Okay, then this is all that is about the mean arc. Then coming to the next part of this is the phases of menstrual cycle. Usually menstrual cycle can be divided, generally it can be divided under 3 phases. Here they have, no doubt they have given 4 phases, but still you can club it into 3 phases, or if you want you can write it in 4 phases, no problem. So here, that is, menstrual cycle can be divided into 4 phases, namely menstrual phase, which is going to extend between 1st to 5th day. Next phase is follicular or proliferative phase, which is between 5th to 13th day. Then next is ovulatory phase, which is on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle. The next last phase is the secretory or luteal phase. So here with the diagrammatic representation also they have given you in order to understand. So menstruation, ovulation, when does it occur, they have highlighted it. You can see it here. So then regarding these phases in detail, so first one phase, as already told you, that is a menstrual phase. Then what all occurs in the menstrual phase? This phase, which is extending between 1st to 5th day of the cycle, it starts with menstrual flow, which you call it as bleeding. Okay, and this bleeding is going to last for 3 to 5 days. Then here you may ask me the question, why does the bleeding occur then? What happens? So here, that is, usually menstruation occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. Okay, I'll tell you what do you mean by this. So here menstruation usually it occurs due to the, or bleeding occurs due to the breakdown of endometric lining of the uterus as well as uterine blood vessels, and that blood itself comes out in the form of here what you call it as bleeding. So once again I will repeat, that is, bleeding is due to the breakdown of endometrial lining of the uterus and its blood vessels, which will form the liquid, and that comes out through vagina. And you may ask me, how much blood is coming out during the bleeding? Usually the blood which is discharged is about 50 to 400 ml. It depends. Okay, and here this menstruation is going to occur only if the released ovum is not fertilized. Only if menstruation will occur only if we are not pregnant, or only if the released ovum is not fertilized. Okay, and then if there is no menstruation, that means you are pregnant. Okay, not in all the cases, but majority of the cases, if there is lack of menstruation, that is going to indicate pregnancy. Sometimes, if don't mistake that if there is no menstruation, there is no menstruation cycle, you are pregnant. No. Sometimes this menstruation, lack of menstrual cycle, it may be caused due to stress, poor health, anxiety, etc. Okay. Then, as I already told you, that is your menstruation begins from menstrual cycle begins from first to fifth day. Then moving to the next phase is follicular or proliferative phase. Follicular or proliferative. So that is next is follicular or proliferative phase. During this phase, or before telling that, let me tell you how long it is. So usually this proliferative or follicular phase is going to extend between 5th to 13th day of the menstrual cycle. So this proliferative phase is going to start from the 5th day after menstruation, and it will complete within 8 to 12 days. Here, during this phase, you can say the primary follicles in the ovary grow to become fully mature Graafian follicles, and simultaneously the endometrium of the uterus regenerates through proliferation. So whatever the endometrium was torn during MC, that is menstrual cycle, that is will undergo regeneration, it will rebuild through proliferation, and these changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced by whatever the changes are occurring, whatever the growth is occurring, proliferation is occurring, these are all induced by changes in the level of pituitary as well as ovarian hormones. So here the secretion of gonadotropin, that is FSH and LH, increases gradually during the follicular phase, and that will stimulate follicular development as well as secretion of secretion of estrogens for the growing follicle. So here you can see the follicular phase, this inside the ovary, this is inside the ovary, they have shown you how the follicles are growing. So here that is they have indicated, that is primary follicle 1 by the number 1, then that will grow, that is the growing follicles are there, that will mature, that is mature follicle, and that follicle how it has ruptured, I will come to that point. So here primary follicle, growing follicles, that is secondary, tertiary, and finally it will give rise to mature follicle. And this here the development of primary follicle into Graafian follicle occurs by the help of this hormone, that is a follicle stimulating hormone, which is secreted by a pituitary. Okay, so then secretion of estrogens by the Graafian follicle also. Okay, it is due under the control of FSH. Then here estrogens or oestrogens stimulate proliferation of ruptured uterine endometrium and mucus lining of oviduct as well as vagina. As already told you, that is your endometrium was torn, now it has to regenerate, and that is going to occur during this proliferative phase. Then under the influence of estrogens, there is also development of secondary sexual characters, then suppression of FSH secretion, and there is also secretion of LH, luteinizing hormone. Then here this is all regarding the your follicular or proliferative. In brief, let me tell you, proliferative phase means, so there is proliferation of your endometrium as well as, that is changes are occurring in the uterus as well as the oviduct, and these changes are occurring due to the changes in the levels of pituitary as well as ovarian hormones. And then during this phase there is secretion of FSH as well as LH. FSH means follicle stimulating hormone, LH means luteinizing hormone. The next phase is ovulatory phase. Ovulatory phase. So here this ovulatory phase is usually present on the 14th day. Ovulatory phase is considered, but it may sometimes vary. It may extend or it may extend. Okay. So here in this phase, both LH and FSH are at the peak level, you can see. FSH as well as LH, that is luteinizing hormone as well as follicle stimulating hormone, attained a peak level in the middle of this cycle, that is on the 14th day. What happens then? Usually these two hormones are there at their peak level. Then, and the high level or rapid secretion of this LH, okay, or it is also called as LH surge, will induce rupture of graphene follicle. In the diagram you can see there were different follicles, okay, and mature follicle was there. This now mature follicle, under the influence of LH, that is luteinizing hormone, this graphene follicle or mature follicle will burst or it will rupture, okay, and thereby what happens is that will lead to the release of ovum, and this is known as ovulation, and usually ovulation will occur on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle. So here in the diagram they have shown, that is LH and FSH will attain a peak level in the middle of the cycle, that is on the 14th day, and then from this graphene follicle, here they have shown, that is graphene follicle, here what happens, that is the egg is released. Okay, that process is called as ovulation, right? In some people, before moving to the next phase, let me tell you, in some people this ovulatory phase, or it may be not fixed on the 14th day, it may extend beyond it also. Okay, then here this 14th day ovulatory phase is called as fertile phase, because it is the phase during which there is chances of getting pregnant, because that time the egg will be released. If we have sex during that phase, that is in between the 14th to 17th day of the menstrual cycle, which is considered as a fertile period, there is the chances of getting pregnant. Okay, then coming to the next phase is ovulatory phase. Sorry, not ovulatory phase. The next phase is a secretory phase or luteal phase. This phase, as indicated, it will extend between 14th to 28th day of the menstrual cycle. So here, what happens in this secretory or luteal phase? So as I already told you, this in the ovulatory phase, that is the mature graphene follicle will rupture and the egg is released. Okay, and now what next? So after ovulation, that is on the 14th day, the graphene follicle, whatever the remaining part of the graphene follicle is there, that is, it is going to transform itself into an yellow endocrine mass called as corpus luteum. So they have indicated, they have marked here, see, it is corpus luteum. So whatever after ovulation, whatever the graphene follicle is remaining, it will transform itself into yellow color endocrine mass called as corpus luteum. This corpus luteum, what is the function of this corpus luteum now? This corpus luteum, it is going to secrete an hormone known as progesterone. Okay, once again I will repeat, they may ask you the question on this. So once again I will repeat, this corpus luteum, which is from the ruptured graphene follicle, it is going to secrete an hormone known as progesterone. And then you may ask me the question, why this progesterone is so much important? Because here they have mentioned, see, this progesterone which is secreted from the corpus luteum, it is essential for maintaining the endometrium. It is essential for maintaining of endometrium. And then you may ask me, why should we maintain endometrium? Such endometrium is necessary for implantation of the fertilized ovum and other events of pregnancy. Okay, so suppose whatever the egg is released now, that egg, if you have sex, that egg may get fertilized, and where that fertilized egg have to go undergo implantation, that may lead to pregnancy. So for that purpose, this progesterone is going to secrete, that is, it is necessary for maintenance of endometrium, and that endometrium in turn is necessary for implantation of the fertilized ovum and other events of pregnancy. Here, as the slide shows, that is, your progesterone will make your endometrium maximum vascular, thick and soft. Thus the uterus gets ready for implantation. And here during this phase, that is progesterone, is going to inhibit the FSH secretion to prevent the development of second ovarian follicle. Okay, then then another question you may ask me. So progesterone, I told you, it is necessary for maintaining pregnancy. But what if you are not pregnant? So if fertilization does not occur, if you are not pregnant, so what happens? That is, the corpus luteum which was formed will now degenerate. It will degenerate. Here they have shown, see, degenerating corpus luteum. Okay, right? This corpus luteum will degenerate, and that will cause the disintegration of endometrium. If the egg is not fertilized, you are not pregnant. And if you are not pregnant, what is the use of the endometrium now? Again, endometrium will, what happens? Disintegrate, and it will lead to next menstrual cycle and new or the again bleeding. Okay, is it clear? So here, during pregnant, and if you are pregnant, all the events of menstrual cycle will stop. There is no menstrual session, and if suppose if you are not pregnant, yeah, as I already told you, your corpus luteum will degenerate, and it will cause disintegration of endometrium, leading to menstrual cycle. Okay, so this is all regarding the secretory or luteal phase. Then here, next here, during as I already told you, during pregnancy, all the events of menstrual cycle will stop, and there is no menstruation. Then here, the diagrammatically they have shown you regarding the overall changes which are occurring during the menstrual cycle. That is, the below line, you can say menstruation, follicular phase, luteal phase, next cycle. And here the changes which are occurring, that is how there is uterine events, ovarian hormone levels, ovarian events, pituitary hormone levels. So here, that is that is changes in the uterine cycle. From below we will go that is changes in the pituitary. From above, that is change in the pituitary hormone, that is FSH and LH level. The next one is they have indicated regarding the change in the ovarian events. Then change in the ovarian hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone level. Change in the uterus, that is uterine events. Then next is about the menstrual cycle, that is the two important events, that is menarche and menopause, which may be asked for 1 mark question. So menarche means what? That is first menstruation during puberty, that is first time when you become mature. The first menstruation during puberty, when you grow up, that is called as menarche. Usually it will occur between 11 to 12 years of age. Then next one is menopause. Okay, so menopause is nothing but the stopping of the menstrual cycle. At about 50 years of age, you can see the menopause. And in between these two extremes, you are going to have your menstrual cycle, that is MC, which will extend from 12 years to 50 years of age. Okay. right? So remember the definition of menarche and menopause, which may be asked for 1 mark question. Don't get confused. The next slide is